In today's episode. Sure, I'll repaint the islands with the wrong paint. Sorry, overtime isn't approved. So you want us to remove a stain off of this wall? Wall, meet chisel. So let's get started. Sure, I'll repaint the islands with the wrong paint. This one I felt kinda bad for because it involved a few injuries, very minor ones luckily. I didn't want to do it, but it came down to my job, so I complied. Here is the story. Years and years ago, back in the early 90s, I worked as a manager at a gas station. We had a great area supervisor who decided to retire. We were all very sad, and even more sad when her replacement came in. He was a total butt. He had just come out of retiring from the military and felt that with his military experience he could whip us into shape. One of the things he wanted done was make the stations look good, which I'm 100% for, but also do it with as little money as possible, which was fine if it was the right thing to do. This time, one of several, it wasn't. So around the pumps are these raised islands. The islands are painted on top with a special paint that has a good grit to it, so when it gets wet from rain or whatever, and people stand on them, they don't slip and fall. Well, this area supervisor wanted the islands repainted. So he got some paint out of our supply depot, and dropped it off at all the stations he ran. No problem, I went around myself and painted the sides of all the islands. They looked great, but the tops of them were not painted. So he shows up one day to inspect and sees that the tops aren't painted. Asks me why. I told him this isn't the right paint, it has to be the gritty thick paint because we don't want customers slipping and falling. He starts yelling at me, tells me he is going to fire me if they aren't repainted by the next day, blah blah blah, and says that it's not my responsibility to worry about the customers, it's his. Total egotistical mindset. Do as I say, don't think. So, I did what he said. I repainted all the tops of the islands that day, nice warm day in the fall, hadn't gotten wet yet really. Next days he shows up, looks around, and has this grin on his face that he beat me into submission type thing. Says something like, see, next time just do what I say, don't question my judgment. I just nodded, knowing what was about to come. And dreading it, because I knew that the customer was going to be the victim here, but there was nothing I could do. A week later we get our first rain. Some of our islands stayed dry under the canopy, but about one half of them got wet because the rain was coming in somewhat sideways. And then it happens. Lady gets out of her car in nice shoes with no grip, steps on the island, slips and falls. She's not really hurt, just a bit of her backside and back, but we call the ambulance anyway. She's pissed. I just tell her to bill the station, and give her the address to make a claim against my area supervisor's info. Then it happens 3 more times over the next couple days. 2 of them were very minor, but the customers were also pissed, but didn't get an ambulance or go to the hospital, but they also got the contact information of my area manager. Then number 4 happened. Could have been much worse, but this guy was dressed in a super nice, and apparently expensive suit, slipped and fell with the hose in his hand right after taking it out of the car. He twisted his ankle, cue ambulance, and a few drops of gas got on his clothes. I again provide my area supervisor's info. Then the weather dries up and the problem goes away for that week at least. About 10 days later my area supervisor drives into my station with his boss. I had met his boss a couple times, cool guy, kinda one of these people that don't take BS from anybody, but is super down to earth and reasonable. Apparently the nice suit guy was a lawyer. He has filed a lawsuit against the station for medical bills, pain and suffering, and the replacement of his super expensive suit. I don't know what the lawsuit was for, but it was way over 10 grand. So the area supervisor and his boss come up to me to discuss the situation. I told them that wasn't the only incident, as I had filed my paperwork as I was supposed to. There was a total of 4 while it was raining. The big boss asked me why this was all of a sudden a problem. I looked at the area supervisor, who I could tell on his face was hoping I was going to say something untrue, but nope, I am going to tell it exactly how it was. I laid it all out. I told him what I was given. I told him that I didn't paint the tops originally. That I told the area supervisor that it wasn't the right paint. He told me to do it anyway or lose my job. I even told him that the area supervisor told me that customer safety wasn't my responsibility, it was his, which is why I gave everyone who got injured the area supervisor's information. The big boss asked me a couple questions, then turned to the area supervisor and said something like, "Okay, I have what I need, let's go," and they left. Surprisingly, the area supervisor kept his job after that but had it out for me. I quit a few months later with no notice for a better job. But he got a huge reaming. Not only that, but his expenses were huge that quarter. He ended up on the bottom of the list, rank-wise, of area supervisors for costs for the quarter. They ended up having to have crews go to all his stations, strip off the bad paint, and repaint all of the tops of the islands with the thick gritty paint. And it had to be done fast before the next rain came in. So huge expense. All he had to do was get me a can or two, and the other stations, of the gritty paint, and I would have gladly used it. But because he had an ego and thought he knew best, it cost the company and his area the settlement of the lawsuit, the other injury claim, and the cost of the crews to come out and repaint all the tops. I'm just glad the injuries were minor. Sorry, overtime isn't approved. So this story dates back when I was 20. I happened to work at Mr. Walton's club and my store manager was kind of AD*CK to me. So I didn't enjoy the job and really was only there because I happened to work a nice shift of 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, 30 minutes unpaid lunch. To be honest, it was my first non-third shift job and I really liked what I did because it was easy, and I got away with pretty much doing nothing. I was part of the maintenance crew that would help by cleaning things, helping where needed, handling spills, etc. For those of you who don't know, the Walton companies do not like overtime at all. At all. I've been pulled into the office for getting 3 to 7 minutes of overtime 4 weeks in a row. So I worked my daily morning shift Monday to Friday with the very occasional Saturday, because the Saturday guy was off and I had to cover. Okay. I don't mind the occasional Saturday with Monday off. I would even stay late some days because something would happen and they would need my help. I wasn't a go-getter, but I would definitely help where needed and stay busy. However, if I stayed late I would have to leave early a different day to keep my 40 hours. What I would not do is work a different shift completely without being asked. One week I saw I was on the schedule for second shift because the second shifter asked off. I didn't get an option. They just scheduled me. I brought it to my boss's attention and he basically told me to suck it up. Cue my thought of malicious compliance. That second shift day happened to be at the end of my work week. So I made sure to show up a little early and stay a little late every day before that. Upwards of 2 hours one day. I stayed busy working and doing things that needed to be done, but definitely didn't need my somewhat slow pace. My second shift day comes. I go into work about 12 or 1 p.m. and stay about an hour and a half and walk up to one of my assistant managers and inform her that I'm about 10 minutes from overtime. Do you want me to stay or should I go home? She informed me I should go home and have a nice day. About 45 minutes later, after I'm at home enjoying a cookout with my girlfriend and friends, I got a call from my work. Curious, I answer, and it's my manager. He says, "Hey Tokmak, where are you? We've had a spill and been calling you on the walkie for 20 minutes. I informed him that I was at my 40 hours already and didn't assistant manager tell you? He says, "Oh. Okay. She didn't tell me. See you tomorrow." I said okay, have a nice day and proceeded to enjoy the rest of my night. For some reason I was never scheduled for second shift again. So you want us to remove a stain off of this wall? Wall, meet chisel. Was working in the office and had to put posters up for work, which was fine. We are not painters or tradespersons. We are the ones using and putting information on the posters and boards for our work. So we used white blue tack to stick the posters to the wall, knowing well in advance that if we ever had to take it down, nobody likes the residue and discoloration left behind. So the day came, and we were ordered to take them down and eventually get ready to paint the walls. So first step was remove the blue tack. Naturally we tried scrubbing, chemicals, saliva and heck, everything we could find online to no joy. We reviewed the piece with our manager at the time and told him what we had done to this point. He stone cold told us he didn't care and to remove it. We pleaded and said it's best to paint over now as it's just a discoloration, but this wouldn't fly. Cue the MC, my colleague and I, who I shit you not took a chisel to the wall to scratch and scrape out the chunk of wall the discoloration was on until the wall was now a different color beneath the top coat too. Bearing in mind the 4 or 5 half-inch by half-inch circles of blue tack residue. So we eventually call our manager in to review the work, and he is standing there absolutely dumbfounded by what he is seeing. WTF, I didn't tell you to do that. US, well actually you didn't care for what we had to say, so we removed it as instructed. And is that what it said to do? US, yep, that's what we found when Googling how to remove something from a wall. At this very moment his manager was walking through this section of building and sees the wall, stops, looks at the surrounding group looking at the same thing and walked away laughing. He knew exactly what had happened and eventually chewed out the manager for not listening to us. We ended up painting over the patch, and it forever had a horrendous roughness to it as we never filled the gaps. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.